evening and welcome to Life Stories. Last week, Life Stories was privileged to host retired Colonel Dr. Besigye, who took us through an interesting story as we examined his other side of life. And today, we're glad to continue with the doctor as he takes us through his bushwa experience and his family life. I'm Zuena Masali, your host. Thanks for joining us. He is widely known for walk to work and his endless battles with Ugandan police. Physician, politician, former rebel, and military officer, the now most famous Ugandan opposition leader is who we unveil on this episode of Life Stories. Only this time, we focus on his other side of existence not so many have bothered to know. You had a very, very good job at Aga Khan Hospital. Why the sudden change to politics?
Before I get into Aga Khan, I was not destined to go to Aga Khan. I was at Mulago. The reason I went to Aga Khan is that I was arrested in 1981, soon after Museveni attacked Kabamba and started the war, because we had supported him in the election of 1980. So when he started the war, I think those in government started looking for those who had been active in support of him and thought that maybe we either knew about those plans or were in some ways involved in supporting what he was doing. So I was arrested, I was tortured for a long time, and eventually when I was released, I was not sure whether I would. Many people I was with in prison have never been seen again. And so I decided to escape. I had been asked to report every day after my release. I decided it was too dangerous, so I escaped to Nairobi. So when I got to Nairobi, I had nothing to do but to register and work in Nairobi. And that's how I got to Aga Khan. But, you know, I went to Nairobi an angry man. What I had left in Uganda was appalling and infuriating. That after we had survived Amin and our hopes raised, that now this is what we had harvested.
An innocent man going to jail.
Yes, and not just going to jail, being tortured and many of the others being killed. You know, so I went to Nairobi, but my mind now was saying the war against this government is justified. If this is what is happening now, this should be fought. And so while at Aga Khan, you know, I was not settled. My mind was still here. And most of the leaders who had supported Museveni in the elections of 1980, or UPM as a party, had fled to Nairobi. So I had the active interaction with all those. In fact, they had set up an external committee there, headed by Matthew Chikaire. And so it was through that interaction that I made up my mind to come and help the people in the bush, because there was no doctor in the bush, I was told at that time. It was Mr. Sam Unjuba, who that time was part of that external committee, who eventually organized for me to come back and join the bush. And that is how I came back and went to the bush.
You got different positions, like high positions in the government at a very, very tender age. How did it feel for you?
Well, I must say that I think I have, because of my unique upbringing and experience, I had all along been more mature than my age. In all the stages of my development, I think I had been thrust into a situation that made me more mature than my age. And yes, when the war ended, I was not yet 30 at that time. I was appointed minister in the government with the important responsibility in internal affairs, and later on in the president's office. And I was the national political commissar heading the NRM secretariat and NRM political program at the time. And I think what this meant at a personal level is that it deprived me of living an ordinary life as a young man, because now I was owned by these state functions, so to say. So I had to live up to the tasks that were thrust on me. So it was no longer possible to socialize as I should have as a young person, and to freely interact and to have time on my hands to hang out and live as ordinary people of that age would live. I was living between meetings and taking action, moving, and real serious responsibilities at a young age, and I think that has unfortunately continued for most of my life. I also became rather anxious about where we were going as a new government much earlier than most, because I had that advantage that, having come from the bush with all the idealism that we had, that I was in government, in a cabinet, and I was seeing some of the beginnings of very frightening things creeping up.
Given chance, he didn't waste any opportunity to do his best. The results were a total reward, with his rebel group turning to a ruling government. To everybody's astonishment, he came up to contest against his long-term ally and colleague Yoweri Museveni during the 2001 elections. Their relationship has become an estranged one ever since. Let's go for a short break, and when we return, the doctor takes us through his plans for retirement. Do not miss.